In this video we're going to learn how to schedule tasks with the cron service in Linux. Now the cron service gives you a convenient and easy way to run a piece of code on a schedule, and that schedule can depend on the needs of the task that you want to run. Now some examples of these types of tasks include backing up a database every night, let's say at 2 in the morning. Running a report once a week could be another task. And you can also schedule tasks that fetch data from an API. And if you're working with data that changes a lot, for example, stock market data, you could run those requests every minute. Whereas other types of data, you can maybe run the requests once a week or once a day, and then store the results somewhere, for example, a database. So in this video, we're going to see how we can schedule cron tasks directly. And we're also going to look at a package in Python called python-crontab that allows you to define these tasks directly in your Python code. Now if you're enjoying this content, please give the video a thumbs up on YouTube and make sure you subscribe to the 𝗵𝗽𝗀 channel to get much more of this content. Now let's dive in. Now let's start by looking at the cron service itself. Now I'm running this on Windows subsystem for Linux using an Ubuntu distribution, but the concepts from this video are transferable to any kind of Linux distribution. Now we're going to see in this video how to schedule a piece of code using the Linux user's crontab file. So let's now have a look at the crontab file so we can see exactly what that is. Now in order to look at these crontab files and create scheduled tasks, we need to actually have the cron service installed. Now I'm going to go to this guide on the 𝗵𝗽𝗀 website, and there'll be a link to this below the video, and this is about getting started with cron jobs on Linux. So let's scroll down and we're going to get the installation command, and I'm going to copy that. It's this one here, it's the apt install cron command. We're going to copy that to the clipboard, and then we're going to go back to our terminal and we're going to paste that in. Now if you're using a sudo command, you might need to enter your password, but once you've done that, that will install the cron service on this Linux distribution. Once that's installed, you can check the status of that distribution. So I'm going to use a command here, and that's the service command. We pass the name of the service we want to check, and then we pass the subcommand that we want to use. In this case, I want to look at the status, and we can see that the cron service is currently not running. So in order to actually schedule these tasks and have cron execute them in the background, you need to have the cron service running. So how do we start that? What we can do is we can use another command, and that's the sudo service cron start command. I'm going to execute that, and you can see that it's started that periodic command scheduler, and now we're free to schedule tasks on the Linux system. So let's get started with that. What we're going to do to start with is look at the user's crontab. So what is the crontab? Let's go to this Linux manual page. You can see that a crontab, these are files that are used to schedule the execution of programs. And these contain instructions for the cron daemon. And the structure of those is very simple. We tell the cron daemon to run a particular command at a particular time on a particular date. And every user in a Linux system can define their own crontab. So let's go back to the terminal just now. We can interact with the crontab using that very command. It's called crontab. And if we pass some options to that, for example -l, that's going to list out the user's crontab. Now you can see a lot of text here, but these are all commented out. There are actually no scheduled tasks for this user in the crontab file. But we can add tasks to the crontab. So let's see an example of that. Again, we use the crontab command, and this time we pass the -e flag, and that gives us an interactive text editor. In this case it's nano, and it's in this file that we can then define any cron tasks that we want to execute on a particular schedule. Now if we look up again at the comments, we get instructions here about what we need to define in this crontab file. So every task has a single line, and we define a time for when we want the task to run. And the time consists of 5 parts, so I'm going to look at these now. We have the minute, so that gives you the minute that you want to run the task. We have the hour, the day of the month, and the day of the week. And these 5 parts allow a lot of flexibility about when you can actually run a particular task. Now I'm going to go to a very useful website for helping you define a schedule in cron, and that's the crontab.guru website. And this section here is an editor that allows you to define your schedule or experiment with different schedules that you want for particular tasks. And you can see the one here, so we have 5 parts. The minute part is set to 5, so we want to execute this at the 5th minute of the hour. And the hour we want to schedule this is the 4th hour, so it's going to execute this task at 4:05 AM. And that's going to happen on every day of the month, on every month of the year, and on every day of the week. Now there's a lot of flexibility about how you define these tasks in cron. So for example, for the minute value, we currently have the number 5. But we can also use ranges of values and step values. So let's see an example of that. Now let's say we want to execute the task every minute from minute 0 to minute 30. We can use this step value here, and it's going to execute the task every minute from 0 to 30. And if we pass a step value in here, for example 2, it's now going to execute every second minute between 0 and 30. So a lot of flexibility here for the minutes, and it's the same for the hours. We could schedule a step value here, and it's going to execute on every second hour from 0 to 23. So you can get very granular with these schedules. Let's now go back to the Cron tab. We're going to see an example of a task. So I'm going to open the terminal, and we're going to go back to this nano editor here, and we're going to go to the bottom of this file. Now I'm going to define a task, and we define the task to run every single minute, and we're using the star on each part of the schedule, and that is going to run the task that we're about to define every single minute. Now for the task, I'm going to run something very simple. We're going to run a curl command, and that's going to send a web request to the endpoint that we define here. So let's just send a request to Wikipedia, and then we're going to take the response here, the output, which is HTML content, and we're going to send that to a file. Now what I'm going to do is send it to the user's home directory, and we have a folder in there called code, and we're going to send it to a file that we're going to call wiki.html. So a very simple task that's going to send a request to Wikipedia and store the response in a file called wiki.html. Let's save the cron tab, and once we save that, you can see the message that we've installed the new cron tab, and we can restart the cron service. So I'm going to go back to that sudo service cron command, and instead of the start command, I'm going to send the restart command, and that's going to restart the cron scheduler. Now let's navigate to the folder that we defined, and that's the code folder here. And if we look at what's in this folder, we have the wiki.html file. It's already appeared because the minute has changed, and the cron scheduler has then run that task, the curl command, and it's done that automatically in the background. That's the power of these cron tasks, and it's saved the result into this file here. Now that's a very simple task. It's maybe not something you would do practically. Let's see a more practical example, albeit another simple example. We're going to go to this Python directory. So I'm going to cd into that. And if we look at the contents of that directory with ls-la, we can see that we have a couple of files here. First of all, we have a Python file, and we also have a database.sqlite file. Now this is a very simple SQLite database that I've just copied into the directory. But one of the things you might very commonly do with a cron task is back up a database. So what we're going to do now is implement this cron task that's going to back up this database, this SQLite file. And because it's a file, it's going to be a very simple process to back that up. But we're going to schedule it using cron, and that gives us the security of knowing that this is happening in the background. And as a system administrator, we therefore don't need to worry about that. So let's go back to the user's cron tab, and we're going to edit that cron tab with the -e flag. And let's go to the bottom of this cron tab, and again we're going to set the schedule here to every single minute. Now a database backup, you might want to do that once a day or once every couple of days. There are different schedules for that, but for the purposes of this video, let's just do it every minute. And the command we're going to use is the copy command, because SQLite is just a file. We're going to copy the file, and that's going to be enough for a very simple backup of the SQLite database. So again, we're going to look at the home directory, and we're going to go into the code folder, and there's a Python folder within that contains our database file, and that file is db.sqlite3. So we're just going to copy this, and we're going to store the copy in the same location, but I'm going to give it the extension .backup. And then we're going to save the cron tab again, and we can go back to the terminal. Now again, I like to just restart the cron service. And once that's done, if we look at the Python directory that we have, we can already see that the backup has appeared here in this directory. So the cron scheduler is picking up that command to copy the database file, and it's scheduling that to be executed every single minute. And that gives us the ability to back up this database. Now we're storing the backup in the same folder. Of course, we might want to store it somewhere else, but again, it's just a quick demo here of how you can use the cron scheduler for these types of tasks. Now I want to show another example, and that's how to perform this backup using a Python script. So the app.py file, I'm going to edit that in VS Code. We're going to open this directory in VS Code with the code command, and that's going to open VS Code, as you can see here. And what we're going to do in this file here is we're going to take the database.sqlite file, and we're going to copy it to a new location. Very similar, but we're going to use the .python backup extension. And what we're going to do at the top is we're going to import a package in the Python standard library, and that's the shell utilities package. Now let's copy the name of that package. We're going to use a function on that package called copy file, and we're going to copy the database file that we have, and that's the db.sqlite file. Copy that to the destination that we've defined here. Again, it's the same directory, but we're giving it a different extension so that we know that this one came from the Python script. Now the purpose of this is just to show how we can execute Python commands using cron, but this will work for PHP, Node.js or any other language. So let's save the file, and we're going to go back to the terminal now. Now on the terminal I want to use the Crontab command, and we're going to edit the user's Crontab. So let's go back to the bottom here, and I'm actually going to change this one here that's using the copy command on Linux. We're now going to go to the Python directory and we're going to run a Python command. So I'm going to use the python-3 command here, and the name of the file that we want to run is app.py. So let's copy that into the command, and what this is going to do every single minute is it's going to run the Python command and execute this script, and that's going to thereby copy this database to the new destination. So again, just creating a very simple backup here. Let's save the Crontab, and we're going to go back to that directory. Now at the moment you don't see the file with the Python extension, but when the time changes, when we go to a new minute here, we're going to hopefully see that file. And when the minute has changed here, you can see that we now have the file with the Python backup extension. So the Python script has been scheduled, it's been run by cron, and we now have the backup. Now I want to move on, and we're going to show how to actually define the cron schedule using a Python package. Now if you're not interested in this, you can skip this part of the video, but what we're going to look at is this package here. It's called python-crontab, and we're going to install that in a Python virtual environment. But what this package allows you to do is it allows you to import an object called crontab, and then define a crontab with particular commands and jobs, and schedule these directly from Python code. And there's more information on Python Crontab in this BetterStack article here, so check that out. It's linked in the description. If we go to this article, we can go to this section here where we can use Python Crontab, and this gives you an example of doing some web scraping on a particular schedule using this package. Now to start with, we need to actually install the package, so we're going to copy the pip install command, and I'm going to go back to the terminal now, and we're in this Python directory, but I want to actually create a Python virtual environment. So we use the python-3 command, and we're going to look at the venv module, and let's create a new environment that we're going to call venv-cron. Now once that command has completed, we can see that we now have a directory here called venv-cron, and in that directory we're going to execute the activate script, and we can use the Linux source command for that. So let's execute that. It's going to be in the virtual environment's bin directory, and in the bin directory the script is called activate. Once you run that, you are now in this Python virtual environment, and we can now run pip install python crontab. So you can see that that installs Python Crontab as well as a couple of dependencies. We can now create a new file in this directory. So I'm going to go back to VS Code in order to do that. So we have our app.py file that defines the database backup code. Let's now create another file, and I'm going to call this cron.py. This is a new Python file. And what we want to do in this file is we want to schedule the execution of this Python file here. It's called app.py. We want to do that and schedule the crontab using this Python code. So at the top, let's bring in a couple of imports here. From Python's pathlib package, we're going to import the path object, and we're also going to import the crontab object from Python Crontab. Now let's start by getting a reference to this app.py file. I'm going to create a variable here called task file, and we now want to point this at the app.py file. So we can get the current directory using the pathlib object, so let's instantiate that. And within the current directory we have an app.py file. Now we want to get the full reference to this path on the Linux file system, so let's wrap this in brackets here and call the .resolve method, and that's a method on pathlib path objects. So we set up this path, we call .resolve, and that's going to give us the full path to the app.py file. And we now need to use the crontab object. So let's go back to the documentation now, and I'm going to scroll down past the scraper code to the code that defines the task, and you can see that here. We define a crontab object and we pass user equals true into that. So I'm going to copy that line of code, and that's going to create the crontab object in this file. And after we've done that, we can go back here, and you can see what we do here is we define a new task using that crontab object that has a method called new, and you can pass commands into that method, and then you can define the schedule below here as well. So for example, if you want to execute this job on a particular minute and a particular hour, you can do that. You can also schedule it to be on particular days of the week. And then when you're done with the schedule, you call the cron's write method. And what that's actually going to do when you execute the Python script, it's actually going to change the cron tab for your user. So this package then goes to the crontab file and it actually edits the crontab directly, so you don't need to use those crontab commands. You can do it from a Python context. Now let's go back to VS Code and we're going to run the app.py script on a particular schedule here. We're going to create a variable called job and we're going to use that cron.new method. And the command that we want to pass in is going to be an f string. We want to use the python-3 command and we're going to pass the reference to our task file, which is the app.py file, and that is the full path to that on Linux. So what this is going to do is it's going to run that file using Python. Once we've defined the job, we can define the schedule. So I'm going to use the job.minute property, and that has a method called every. And if we want to run the job every minute, we can pass a number in there, and that's going to do that every single minute, unless we specify additional schedules below here. Once we're done, we can call the cron.write method, and we're going to run the cron.py file now using Python. So let's go back to the terminal. Before we do that, I just want to go back to the user's cron tab, and we're going to edit that cron tab and comment these both out. We're now going to run this file using Python, which is hopefully going to add another entry to the cron tab at the bottom. So let's save the cron tab and go back to the terminal, and within this Python directory we are now going to remove these backups. So we can do that with the Linux rm command. That's going to remove some files from the file system if we pass the -f flag, and we want to remove any file that ends with bak. So let's execute that, and if we run the ls-la command again, we can see we no longer have the backups. Now what I'm going to do is run python-cron.py, and that is hopefully going to add a new entry to the cron tab. So let's go back to the cron tab and we're going to list out this user's cron tab, and we can see at the bottom there is actually a new entry. We might be able to see this better if we edit the cron tab and go to the bottom. We can see the new entry for our python-3 command, and we have the full path to the app.py object. So that is now scheduled, but it's now been done in a different way. The scheduling is now controlled by code that we've written in a Python file, and if you have complex setup and complex operations that you want to do, it might be easier to do this way, but we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the video. Now this code that we have added to the cron tab here should now execute that backup using the Python file. So let's go back to our directory, and we can now see that we have the Python backup file again. So that is working fine. We're controlling that with the Python Crontab package. Let's go back to the documentation for Python Crontab, and I'm going to scroll down to see some of the options that we have when we define the schedule. And we can see some of the options here for executing a job during particular times and at particular intervals using the every method and the during method. We have, for example, here the ability to execute the job every 4 hours and the ability to execute a job on day 4, 5 and 6. And we have another option here for the day of week. So for example, if you want to execute something on a Sunday or on a Sunday and a Friday, you have those options as well. And we also have the ability to schedule tasks during a particular month. So a lot of flexibility here, and that matches what we saw earlier on crontab.guru. Now there's one last thing to show in the code. We can even set comments for our jobs. So underneath the job and before we call cron.write, we have a method called setComment. And I'm going to pass some text in here that's going to define the comment that appears in the cron tab. Let's now save this and go back to the terminal, and I'm going to rerun the python cron.py command. And if we go to the cron tab again and we edit that and go to the bottom, you can see we now have a new cron expression that has the comment at the end of it. So it's very flexible. We can even set comments using Python Crontab, and that is a best practice when you have cron tasks. You should have a comment that explains what they do in the crontab file. Now at this point the question might arise, how do you monitor these tasks? And what we're going to do is show an example of how we can use BetterStack to monitor these tasks and make sure that the cron jobs are executing as expected. So let's exit out the cron tab here, and what we're going to do is go to the BetterStack platform, and we're going to create what's called a heartbeat. Now there will be links to this page below the video. What we're going to do is create a heartbeat, and we're going to give the service a name. Let's call this Python Cron Demo, and below the name we have a couple of options for when we expect the heartbeat to be sent and the grace period for the job. Now the grace period refers to the time that the job needs to successfully execute, and BetterStack recommends adding 20% reserve on top of your expected duration. And we also have options here for setting up an escalation if an incident occurs. So if we don't get the heartbeat when we expect it, we can have an escalation which is going to maybe call somebody or send an email or an SMS. And finally, if the on-call person does not acknowledge the incident, we have some options about how to address that. So let's create the heartbeat now. And when that's created, we get back a URL, and I'm going to copy that URL to the clipboard. And we can see below here, the last heartbeat recorded. That block is set to waiting. We've not had a heartbeat from our service yet. And we've been waiting for 24 seconds, and we can see that number updating in real time. So let's now go back to VS Code, and what we need to do is we need to send a request to that heartbeat endpoint. And that's going to tell BetterStack that the task is running, it's executing successfully. We send a simple request to the endpoint, and then BetterStack will know that everything is working, and that's the happy path. But on the other hand, if you don't receive the heartbeat, then an incident will be raised, and that will inform your administrators. So let's see now an example of just sending the request and what happens on the platform. Let's get back to the terminal here, and what I'm going to do in the virtual environment is install the requests package in Python. And this is a very simple package, very commonly used in Python to send HTTP requests to URLs. So what we can do in VS Code is we can import requests in our task. Now the task is defined in app.py, that's where we're actually copying the database file to the backup. So what we're going to do at the top is import requests, and after the copy file operation has finished, we can then send a get requests using the requests.get function, and we're going to pass in that URL to that function. So I'm going to paste that in here, and then we can save the file, and we're going to see if this heartbeat is picked up on the BetterStack platform. So let's go back to the browser now, and we're waiting at the moment for the heartbeat. If I refresh the page, you can see still waiting because this does update in real time. You don't actually need to refresh the page. And when the minute changes, the cron job should be executed, and we should see that the heartbeat has been recorded, and this pending time should also reset. So I'm waiting for that now, and we'll restart the video when we get that heartbeat. And we can see now that the heartbeat has been recorded, in this case 12 seconds ago, and our service has now been up for 7 minutes according to this page here. So we get that security, we know that the service is running, the cron task is running, and it's sending the heartbeats to BetterStack where we can record that, and you can see some of the recorded heartbeats in this graph below. Obviously over time that will fill up, and you also get some metrics just below that about the availability of this particular service. Now if we were to stop the cron task, the heartbeats would no longer be sent via that get request, and an incident would be raised on the platform, and the status of up would change to down. So let's see an example quickly of that before we finish the video. I'm going to go back and I'm going to actually stop the cron service. So let's run sudo service cron, and we're going to run the stop command. And what that means is that the cron jobs that are defined in the user cron tab are not going to be executed, and therefore this get request is not going to be sent, and we're not going to get the recorded heartbeats on the page here. So again, let's stop the video and we'll restart it when the status changes. And after waiting a little bit of time, the heartbeats have stopped being received and the status is now down, and our service has now been down for 38 seconds and an incident has been recorded. And this is an ongoing incident. If we click this button here, we get taken to the incident page. We get the cause, which is a missed heartbeat, and also when that started, as well as the length of the incident. And currently this is an ongoing incident, it has not been resolved. So that's an example of how you can take the cron jobs that are defined in your user cron tab, and you can monitor that service using BetterStack, and you can be informed when these incidents occur and take quick steps to resolve these issues. And just to finish the video, I want to go back to the BetterStack article on job scheduling in Python, and there's a section on the left hand side on managing existing cron jobs. Let's click that. We can see some of the options that are available in the python-crontab package. We can iterate over existing cron jobs, and we can also use the find time method, and that is going to find any jobs that have the schedule that's defined by this argument to that method. And if we scroll down further, we can see here an example of the set comment method that we used. And again, going down further, we can also find cron jobs by the comment. And if we go further down, we can also enable and disable jobs. So jobs have an enable method. If you pass false to that, it's going to disable the job. Otherwise, the job will be enabled and it will be run by the cron scheduler. And we can also remove a job entirely using the remove method. And there's further information in this article about the Python schedule module. We did a video on that, and that should be appearing on the screen now, so check that out if you're interested in more. And just before we finish the video, I want to look at the crontab file again. Now these are very simple scripts that we're executing, but the logic in these scripts can be as complex as you like, and that's very common. You might have very complex operations that use cron tabs and are executed on a schedule. So this is not limited to just simple tasks. And while it's interesting to run cron expressions from Python code, I think the best approach is maybe to learn about the cron tab itself and cron on Linux systems. It will often be simpler just to use cron directly, and it also avoids this extra dependency. But this package here in Python, it's there if you need it, and it can help if you have some complex logic around your tasks. So that's all for this video. We've learned about cron scheduling on Linux operating systems and how to schedule tasks and scripts to be run on particular schedules. And if you're interested in content involving tools like Celery and Apache Airflow, let us know. And don't forget to give the video a thumbs up on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you in the next video.